Hello, and thanks for tuning in to Town Meeting TV's coverage of General Election 2024. My name is Debbie Ingram, and I'll be the moderator for tonight's program. It's part of a series of candidate forums hosted by Town Meeting TV in advance of the general election on Tuesday, November 5th of this year. These forums are made possible by Town Meeting TV's generous underwriting partners. You can find all our forums at cctv.org/general or on our Town Meeting TV YouTube channel, where auto-generated captions are available. And if you're tuning in on YouTube, be sure to click the subscribe button to stay tuned into local democracy this election season. On tonight's program, we will hear from two of the four candidates running for the highest office in the state for governor. And those two candidates are June Goodband of the Peace and Justice Party and Kevin Hoyt, an independent. Welcome to both of you. Thanks for joining me tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Now, we have prepared a list of questions for each of you, and you will have 90 seconds to answer each question. To the 90-second rule, the opening statements are 1 minute, okay? And we will try to go back and forth with who starts first. But why don't we start with Kevin to begin with? And basically the opening statement is for you to tell us why you're running and what experience qualifies you to serve as governor.
Sure. Well, I think like most people watching this broadcast, I successfully avoided religion and politics my whole life. The truth is I don't want to govern anybody. I think Vermonters are some of the best people on earth, and I don't think you need Phil Scott or me or anyone else to tell us what to do. I want to govern an out-of-control system. So I guess I got to the point where I was tired of watching my friends and neighbors suffer and die. I was questioning whether I could afford to live in the state that I love with the people that I love. So I threw my hat into the arena, if you will. Again, since then I've become a reporting party for our multi-state federal RICO investigation. We've discovered a lot of corruption here in Vermont state. So again, I think I've worked cross-party lines. Ralph Wright, the longest Speaker of the House, in Democrat history here in Vermont state. His son Ricky is actually a fellow reporting party, a federally deposed witness for our RICO investigation. So I think it's about coming together and bridging those party lines. It's just other titles. Thank you.
Thank you. June?
Hi, I'm June Goodband, and I'm a candidate because I want to be a voice for the people who can't bankroll campaigns or pay lobbyists. And my chief qualification is that I'm not bought by anybody, so I can always represent the public interest and not feel like I have to stand up for other people's interests. I have a vision of Vermont as a state where all of us are able to meet our basic needs, including our need to make a meaningful contribution. And I understand that the Constitution of the U.S., of the state, was set up so that there's a division in roles for the governor and the legislature. And I want to work closely with the legislature and cooperatively with the employees of the state to create a state that works for all of us. And I think we can do this if we're all working together.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's start with our first specific question on specific issues. And we want to tackle the subject of property taxes and education. This year, many Vermonters will see a double-digit increase in their property taxes, and nearly a third of school budgets failed on town meeting day. How will you approach education funding reform and property taxes for the coming fiscal year? And we'll start with you, June.
I think the system of relying on local property taxes has largely failed, and that we need to shift so that we're now using a progressive income tax and creating three funds. One would pay specifically for a per student rate. One would pay for special ed, which would include the cost of special ed teachers and the needs outlined in each student's IEP. And one would pay for building maintenance, and all of those would be distributed according to priorities and the needs. And the first two would be automatic. This is what has to happen. And I think through that, we could meet the court's requirement that we have an equitable education system.
Okay, thank you very much. Kevin?
Well, I think we need total education rehaul and reform. I think it's not working if you're still calling that education. My opinion is we need to give the rights back to the parents. What's happening in our school system right now is shameful. But I think we need to get the state out of education. I think we need to remove Chinese core curriculum out of education. I think the future of education in Vermont State is private schools, charter schools, and home schools, and it's as simple as the money follows the student. The problem is, again, the money. We're looking at up to $39,000 per elementary for some of our elementary schools, and corruption is a big underlying problem in Vermont State. We just won #1, thanks Phil, in the state for corruption, 3rd year in a row. So I think, again, it's another racket. About 85% of our taxes go to education, and I don't think we're getting education. We pay some of the highest costs in the nation for some of the lowest test scores. So I see a total rehaul on education, and I think that's it's #2 actually behind my opioid crisis, right? I got a way out of the opioid, and we'll get into that. But I think education needs total reform, along with a lot of other systems.
Okay, thank you for that response. So now let's switch gears a little bit to the subject of housing. This past session, Democrats in the House proposed spending an additional $100 million per year for 10 years on publicly subsidized affordable housing. This level of investment was not passed in the Senate. Would you support this level of public investment in housing? And Kevin, we'll start with you this time.
I wouldn't. In fact, I think the problem here, the underlying problem, is corruption. I don't think you're the problem because you're made out of carbon. I think they're the problem. We cannot afford our frivolous spending, no accountability government anymore. So housing is a big issue, especially, again, they just cut off the winter housing program where we send people to our motels. I think we have to right now. And it's ironic because it's kind of backwards. In one breath, we'll hear our legislators talk about we have a population problem. And in the next breath, we got to build 30,000 housing, right? Well, who are the houses for, right? People have noticed, I think immigration plays a role in this. Housing is almost impossible to find in Vermont State. Affordable housing doesn't exist. And I think the underlying problem is the cost of living. So again, how I would combat is that maybe we'll let you keep some of your own money, right? And hopefully you can spend it a little wiser than our legislators are. So again, I think housing is a huge, huge issue. We have people that are starving to death, that are dying on our streets. We have to take care of the people first. As far as the cost, again, more money, more money. I hear that out of all of our legislators and all of the politicians and candidates. But there's no accountability again. Who's going to pay for that? Your property taxes just quadrupled. Can't afford them anymore. So I think, again, corruption really plays a big, big part in this. Thank you.
Thank you. June.
We need to invest in housing. We don't need to throw money away and subsidize landlords. The state can buy housing and build housing and set up co-housing communities so that people can buy their own homes, even if it's an apartment, and be able to afford to live. We need to move to a no-profit housing system for those in need and those who are struggling to be able to afford housing on the open market. We also need to make sure that people are paid enough to live in Vermont, which is not something that's happening now. When people are stuck because they're living on really low incomes, they're disabled or elderly, we may need to subsidize that by selling them housing at under cost. But usually we can sell them at cost and get our money back. And we're not just throwing good money after bad.
Thank you very much for that answer. A related subject, you both touched on it already, is emergency shelter. Vermont reported 3,295 people experiencing homelessness in 2023, which was up from 1,110 in 2020. This year, the state is rolling back its pandemic-era emergency shelter capacity across the state, pushing hundreds more Vermonters onto the streets. How will you approach the need for emergency shelter in the coming session, and how should the state pay for it? And we'll start with you, June.
Okay, we need to create emergency shelters for the homeless the same way we would handle any emergency, like a climate emergency. And that can be done by making more vacant buildings available. This could be done by putting a high tax on vacant buildings and waiving that tax, and maybe even subsidizing owners who will allow their buildings to be used for temporary homeless shelters, and getting services in right away to help people find and maintain long-term stable housing. We can also provide a range of supports and incentives for people who are willing to take in people who would otherwise be homeless. These can even be family members or friends, but it keeps them off the street. And we need to make sure that when they take someone in, if they need to get them out, they can get them out. We can also support multi-generational households that take the pressure off of the housing market. Right now, the per household cost of the motel housing program over the past 4 years could have paid for the kind of long-term housing that people really need for a lot of people. And I think we need to do inexpensive short-term housing and invest in long-term stable housing, because that allows us to be members of the community.
Okay, thank you. So Kevin.
Well, I love her idea of utilizing some of the spare space that we have. A lot of businesses and buildings are vacant in Vermont State, and that's a great utilization of that space. And I like the idea of subsidy too, as far as taxes. But I think that's the answer. Is here's some crazy words out of a politician, right? Tax cut, tax break, right? How about ROI? People don't know what that is anymore. A return on investment. What we need is jobs. We need opportunity. Once you get the house, maintaining and keeping that house is the hard part. And even people that have jobs today, you're working 3 jobs because they only give you 36 hours a week, and there's no benefits, and both parents are working. If you live in a 2-parent home and income, their system's not working anymore. How often have we tried this? How many times do we have to go through it? I'm hearing the same old policies. Again, we need more money and for something that is not working. I think we need outside the box thinking. It's a very complex question to start with. Again, I think opioids, addiction issue that's facing the nation, the homeless population, the income. There's so many different things that are playing a factor to this, but we have to make sure once people have the housing, and I'm for building houses too, that they can maintain and keep that housing, because that's the problem, is the cost of living. It's your government. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, so our next topic is around public safety and criminal justice. Public safety is a top priority for many voters in this election. This past session, lawmakers increased judicial staff, increased retail theft penalties, and expanded restorative justice practices in Vermont. What more needs to be done by the legislature to advance public safety and repair Vermont's criminal justice system? Evan, would you start us off?
Sure. We'll start with, no matter how bad you think you are, you got nothing on your senator. Maybe we need a little accountability in our own government. We look at our own government, again, number 1 in corruption. That has to do with your taxes. That has to do with your safety, your public safety. Gun control is another big issue. I am a strong supporter of the Second Amendment and responsible gun ownership, safe, responsible gun ownership. And it's proven right now, if you are in favor and promoting gun control, you're promoting higher crime rates. It's not a question, it's not an argument. Every time anywhere in the world we put bans or restrictions on honest, law-abiding citizens, the crime rate goes up. And I don't think anybody wants higher crime rates. So one of my executive orders, in fact, involves the Second Amendment. I think we need to become a 2A sanctuary state so that you have the right, your firearm freedoms, you can keep that. We need to repeal the unconstitutional, illegal thought laws that we've already brought forward so you can protect your property and your family, because your government's not doing a good job. So again, public safety, I think we have to rely on each other. I like the public watch programs, neighborhood watch programs, and I'm all for armed, trained citizens that are qualified to help protect each other. We used to be one of the safest states in the union. It's not the case anymore, right? I think aggravated assaults are up 56%, violent crimes I think were 70-something, 166% in homicide rates in the last 10 years. If you guys want to continue down that path, we continue with the same policies. I've got new policies. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So June.
I believe that that investing in and improving restorative justice programs is a really wise investment. Right now, incarcerating a person for a year costs over $90,000, and most of those people reoffend because when they get out, they're worse off than they were when they went in. They don't have the skills or the support to make real changes in their lives. And it would be a lot more effective and cheaper if we started right after the crime was committed with making amends and finding a way to build a life that works without the crimes. And sometimes that's going to mean meeting particular needs if they've got mental health needs, substance abuse problems, or even what I guess I'm going to call an entitlement problem, that we could address those problems in the communities. Sometimes it would require having people move out of their own community and be given jobs elsewhere so that their neighborhood is safe. And we can find a way to make this work. Prisons are expensive and not effective in increasing public well-being or safety. So I think there may be a small number of people that need them because they're not allowed out in the public for real good reasons, and I'm thinking of Charlie Manson types. Okay, but most people are going to be in our communities anyway, so we might as well start from the beginning and do the cheaper, more effective approach.
Okay, thank you for that. So yes, now we're going to discuss the overdose crisis, which you've mentioned a couple of times. So 231 people died from an overdose in Vermont in 2023, with 95% of overdoses involving fentanyl. What must be done to prevent overdoses, to promote addiction recovery, and deter the illegal sale of opioids in Vermont? And June, we'll start with you.
As long as people can make huge profits by dealing drugs, there are going to be people willing to do it. So we need to work with the federal government about shifting the prohibition and war on drugs stance and moving towards recognizing that substance use disorder is a disorder and needs to be treated. We also can do a lot towards prevention by having people be able to meet their needs, build strong, resilient communities, people that care for each other, and that's going to go a long way towards reducing the problems of addiction, keeping them from starting. We also need harm reduction. It'd be nice to say, oh, we don't have to worry about that, but we need injection sites, we need needle exchange programs, and we need really available treatment programs that go as far as people need them to go. And that's going to include long-term supports for recovery, and sometimes housing, jobs, assistance.
Okay, thank you. Kevin.
All right, this is, again, a 90-second to explain all this, right? I think this is the #1 problem facing not only Vermont, but the nation. When I first started this mission, quest, whatever we're going to call it, in 2019, we averaged, I think it was 16 overdoses per 100,000 Vermonters. Today we're up to 36 in 2024. Our numbers, I say double, they grow by 200 or 300% every year. Our coroners can't keep up. How many people need to die before we do something? And it's always somebody's daughter, it's always somebody's son or relative, and I have compassion and empathy, sympathy for these people. So I'd like to treat these people like a sick part of society rather than a criminal part of society. Just talked about safety, and again, our for-profit prison and police system is not working, right? This is another setup. Those people were set up as well. So we're talking about long-term rehab. I'd like to follow Portugal. The world precedent's already been set. They reduced overdose rates by about 85%, heroin usage by 75%, drug use in general 56%, and crime by over 400%. They dropped. Again, our numbers grow by 300 or 400% every year. So we're talking about long-term rehab from 3 months to 18 months, a year and a half, your life. family support, jobs training, sober living, aftercare, mental health therapy. We've never done anything like this in the world, and it works. It's already proven. Not only do we save money, but we save lives of Vermonters, so that's the important part. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you both. We've covered some very serious subjects so far. Now I'm going to change pace a little bit with what we like to call a lightning round. So we have a series of questions, and we'd like you to either answer yes or no, or at least try to be less than 10 seconds if you feel the need to qualify your answer. And as we get towards the end, they're a little more lighthearted. So I will just go sort of ping pong back and forth, and start with June and go to Kevin each time. Okay. So the first one is, should private schools be funded with public dollars? Okay.
When private high schools accept all students in their area, they should be allowed to continue to do so. When there's a special needs student, they should be placed where they need to be. Otherwise, no.
Okay.
I'd say in the existing system, no, but again, through different policy, I think yes. Again, the future, in my opinion, is private school, charter, and homeschool. The money follows the student. So.
Okay. Second question, do you support raising the age of family court jurisdiction? June?
Yes.
Okay. Absolutely not. No.
No.
Keep the court and the government out of our lives if we can.
Okay. Next, should biomass, burning wood, play a role in emissions reduction strategies?
No.
No, this is a tricky one too, because I don't want to ban wood burning, but I'm not a fan of biomass. So I'm in the middle. June's with me.
Okay, you agree on that. Okay, good. Next, do you support a statewide ban on assault weapons?
I'm with Fred Tuttle on this. He said we all need a rifle for deer and a shotgun for woodchucks. An assault rifle makes a real mess of a woodchuck.
It does. But if the Crips and Bloods are outside and my wife is home alone, I want her to have a large capacity magazine, right? And again, it's your definition of assault rifle. They keep changing definitions. The Romans talked about banning assault rifles or weapons, and they're talking about swords and spears, right? So again, our definition keeps on changing. I'll remind everybody, automatic weapons are already against the law. They're illegal in Vermont state and everywhere. You really have to have special permits. Likewise, I could have a tank if I wanted to, and I think we should as people. It's not, the Second Amendment isn't in case the deer get tyrannical, right? So.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, should legislators be paid more? June.
Legislators should be paid a living wage, just like the rest of us.
Man, again, tricky questions. If you look at our poor House reps, they don't get paid anything. They're almost set up for embezzlement, right, to survive. So I'm going to say yes in some cases, but if you go back and look, if elected as governor, I'm not going to take a paycheck. I plan on taking the position but not the job, because I actually think it's illegal. I think it violates executive order, because it's not a real government. It looks like a government, right? It's a corporation, acts like a government, tax you like a government, tyrannical like a government, but I don't think they actually have legal jurisdiction and standing. So I don't want to be the governor of that old system, tax system, education system, the election system, all these systems, let them go. I'm going to govern this new system that we're building together.
Alrighty. Do you support banning or limiting student cell phone use in schools?
I think that's up to educators, and the state shouldn't decide that.
Okay.
I do. I think they should be focused on their studies when they're in school. Again, emergencies, it's great to have a cell phone, but if I was a teacher, you'd get in trouble if I caught you with it.
Okay. Alrighty. So where do you get your news? June.
I use a variety of sources, and I look for sources that are that have journalistic standards.
Okay.
So it ranges from the Wall Street Journal to Democracy Now!
Okay.
A lot of my news comes from experience. And then I've been blessed with world travel, and I thought I was chasing girls or chasing deer all over the country, but I was setting up this network of regular people. In the meantime, I just created and started the Grassroots Warrior Network. So we've created our own news network that's on Rumble. Social media is a good place for me to get my news, and some really cool friends. I got some great friends all over.
Okay. Do you ride the bus? June?
No.
No. Okay.
I have a couple times. In Bennington, again, we've got the, the community bus that goes around, and I've been on that once or twice, but I'm not a regular rider of the bus.
Okay. And the most important question, what's your favorite ice cream in Vermont?
Rosie Oats in Queechee, and I'd like to try the Offbeat Creamies in Winooski.
Okay, sounds good.
I love it. Not Ben & Jerry's, I'll say that. How about Wilcox? Wilcox Dairy, again, another Vermont farm. And I love, again, Vermont and our cows and our farmers. We got a lot of important things coming for sustainable farming and a little detaxation and deregulation for them too. So everybody likes creamies. We can all agree on that.
It's true. It's true. Okay, great. Well, let's. In the interest of time, we're running out just a little bit here. So I'm going to prioritize our question on climate change. 2025 is the first year that Vermont is required to meet a series of emissions reduction targets outlined by the Global Warming Solutions Act. Is Vermont on track to meet the 2025 target? What more needs to be done to reduce our emissions? And Kevin, we'll start with you.
Now we're going to get into trouble and a little bit of controversy, right? Because I don't believe in the green energy lie. I think it costs us more money for less efficiency. And I think the same people are making the exact same money. I don't think it's green. I think it's very, very bad for the earth. And it's that act that you're talking about, the Global Solutions, whatever it's
Warming
called.
Solutions
Warming
Act.
Solutions Act. I think it's illegal. I think it's unconstitutional. And I think it's impossible. You guys have to remember, we're made out of carbon. So if we're going to reduce our carbon emissions by 80%, I like people, and I like deer, and I like plants. Right, according to, Al Gore wants to ban farming because the carbon footprint's too big. That's an issue. Can't grow cows because cows fart. No more farting cows, right? So again, I think this is another. Again, CCP has a lot to do with it, but a lot of it's propaganda. I don't think it's a good idea to put our entire transportation system on an already failing electrical grid. I think the people who think that should be questioned at the very least. And again, solar panels. If you look at solar or wind, are our big two options. Lithium is so bad for our planet. These things, we put a lot of money and effort into it. We spend 5 times the fossil fuel to get them, and then we get 20 years out of them. The maintenance cost is very high. I see a lot of new energy things coming. I've seen engines that run on water and air, so I'm excited for the future of Vermont. I think that's changing.
Okay, and June.
We're not on target, but we're moving in the right direction. I think we need to look into additional alternatives like expanding rail service, especially for long distance. And some of the infrastructure is already there and just needs to be upgraded. And we need to have schedules that are workable for people. The system has to be affordable for people, and it has to be convenient or it won't work. We also need to make the policies that are currently available more available for middle and low income people and easier to use. And we need to stop putting all the money into private contractors and have more be just done and easy for people to set up. We can expand local production and distribution of food while keeping carbon sequestered in the forest and in our bodies. We want to stay healthy and alive. Mm-hmm. That's keeping it sequestered. We're talking about CO2 that we're concerned about. But we also need to control other greenhouse gas emissions like nitrous oxide and methane.
Great. Well, thank you both so much for your thoughtful answers, and really, I learned a lot, and I hope you at home did. Unfortunately, our time is almost up, so I just want to say thank you for tuning in to Town Meeting TV's ongoing coverage of local candidates, local budgets, and ballot items. You can find this and many more forums at cctv.org/general or on our Town Meeting TV YouTube channel. And don't forget to cast your ballot in the general election on or before November 5th. You should have received your ballot in the mail already if you're registered. If you have not received your ballot, you can check with your town clerk to find out what's going on. And in Vermont, you can also register to vote on Election Day. And then make sure that you tune in to Town Meeting TV's results recap show that evening of November 5th. Thank you for watching and sharing Town Meeting TV.